Hey everybody! In today's video, I am going to be doing some watercolor with the new Versafine Clair Inks. I am so excited to be showing you these today. I got these before Creativation, and I've had so much fun with them. This is the way the ink pads look, and I just want to show you to start out with how well they ink a very solid image. You get that same amazing coverage that you get with Versafine, but this comes in a bunch of beautiful colors. And so we're going to have some fun with the Bluebell color today. I'm trying out some new watercolors that I purchased recently based on something someone online said. You know how we all get enabled. And I wanted to try them with the Bluebell color of Versafine in this gorgeous little acorn stamp from Stampin' Up. I have this set up in my mini MISTI, and I'm going to put the acorn up in the corner. And I initially tried to get the stem to go off the edge of the cardstock, but I underestimated just a little bit, and you'll see how I fix that later in the video. So here's the stunning Bluebell color. One thing I love about these ink pads is they stack. They click together, so it's a little different than the regular Versafine black that you're used to. We all love a stacking ink pad, but it's the coverage of this pigment ink that makes it just completely amazing. You can take a brand new photopolymer stamp that you have never inked and get a complete solid image with Versafine Clair. Now this is an exciting moment for me because I typically use dye inks when I do no line watercolor, but when I do want the line to show, I have to use a waterproof black ink. And so it's so much fun to be able to use colored inks in watercolor. And I'm going to use a bunch of different inks to watercolor with now. I think it just opens up a lot of opportunities for me with watercolor for a bunch of different looks that I was unable to get before. So these are Old Holland watercolors. I was on Wet Canvas, which is my favorite online watercolor forum. And there are some great enabling threads on there. One of them is called What's Your Most Recent Watercolor Purchase? And basically, if you go into that thread, you're just going to be forking over a ton of money on fun new watercolor tools, which is what I've done. But I heard great things about these blues from Old Holland, and so that's what I'm using today. These are my Escoda Versatil travel brushes. I love this brush. It holds a point really, really well. I was watercoloring with Dawn Wollslagle from W+9 last fall, and she showed me the difference between brushes like these. I also have another favorite, which I'll link below, that she introduced me to, and the silver brush, Black Velvet, which a lot of us crafters had been using. And the difference is that silver brush does not hold a point. It's a great brush. It holds a bunch of water, which is why I liked it initially, is I could really load up my brush with water and pigment. But if you really want to be able to do detailed painting, and this is a fairly detailed painting, you need a brush that is going to hold its point. So that's why I've switched to the two brushes that I use now. These travel brushes are great. I took them to Creativation. You can get them without the case, and I will link you to those below the video and on my blog. But I like the little case. I like cases. I like little organize-y stuff. So I'm actually going to use all three of these blues. I'm using the Delft Blue and the Holland Blue for the acorn and the leaves, and then the Manganese Blue for the background. Manganese Blue is always sort of my go-to sky color because it's more of an aqua And it sounds weird to say that I'm always using kind of a more green blue in the sky, but it's just my preferred sky color. So there you have it. I guess in my mind, the skies are kind of a turquoisey, greeny blue. And I'm not finished painting the leaves and the acorns. It's just that I want them to dry before I go back and forth between the Holland Blue and the Delft Blue color for shading. If I don't wait for them to dry, I will get little areas of bleed where I'm putting in the shadows, and I don't want that. They're two very different blues. That Delft Blue is such a classic blue. It's the blue of the blue willow china that's in my cabinet. It's the blue of the Scandinavian art that my pastor and next door neighbor had all over his house. And then the Holland Blue is more of a punchy sort of ultramarine. And you'll see that they look very different when I put them down in the shadows. I'm getting a much brighter look from the Holland Blue and just a classic Delft color, one of my favorite colors in the world, with the Delft Blue. So I do have to say that the people who enabled me to get these three colors and try them out, just to see how they differ from my Daniel Smith blues, did a great job enabling me and describing why these particular blues were so incredibly beautiful. And a lot of times, if you are trying to learn how to watercolor, if you're trying just to practice and increase your ability to do light and shadow, I encourage you to try watercoloring with just a single pigment, because the value differences that you can get in watercolor are so great, even with a single pigment, that it will really help you learn how dark your darks need to be and how light your lights need to be without the added complicating factor of multiple pigments. So grab a stamp image, or if you are skilled at drawing, which I am not, then make a little sketch and try doing a value study in a single color. And of course, you know, the single color that I'm going to recommend is blue. So pick your favorite blue watercolor. But here you can see on the leaf how that Holland Blue is brightening up the Delft underneath and giving it a little bit of light. So since I'm doing 3 blues, this isn't really technically a value study, but I do love value studies. The very first serious sketch that I did in watercolor, I did a value study first, and it really helped me improve my final painting. So after I have a couple more layers of both of these colors down, I am ready to turn this into a card with the sentiment from the set. And the matte layer that I have here is actually just using the BELLE Versafine Clair with direct to paper on a piece of watercolor paper, and it gave me that sort of variegated look that you see in the matte around the focal image. So that's all for today. Thanks so much for watching.